Decades had turned to centuries in the annals of Persia, yet the tale of the lost crown, and its return, remained etched in every fire temple and whispered in every caravan halt. Kavi the Just, once a captain of common blood, had reigned longer than any before him, his hair silvered like moonlight on the Cyrus River, the sacred crown still resting lightly upon his brow. He ruled not from iron will but from the quiet strength of one who remembered what it was to carry a burden for others. Under him, the empire stretched farther than even Darius had dreamed, from the frozen steppes where Scythian horsemen bowed, to the spice-scented coasts where Indian rajas sent tribute in peacocks and pearls. But time, that patient thief, began to claim its due. Kavi felt the first tremor in his bones during the festival of Nowruz. As the people leaped over bonfires and the air filled with the scent of hyacinth and rosewater, he stood on the high terrace of Persepolis and watched the sun rise over the Apadana. The crown, usually cool as mountain spring, grew warm against his skin, almost feverish. That night he dreamed of the Simurgh, but her wings were tattered, her cry faint, as though calling from the far side of a storm. When he woke, the first cracks appeared. Not in stone or earth, but in loyalty. In the western satrapies, where Greek mercenaries had long served as immortals, a new philosophy took root. Teachers from Athens spoke of republics without kings, of men equal before law rather than gods. Their words were sweet poison to young nobles weary of ancient rites. In Babylon, Chaldean priests declared the stars foretold the end of Achaemenid rule. In Media, old clans remembered grudges from the days when Cyrus had subdued them. All these threads wove together, pulled taut by a single hand, a man who called himself Darius the Restorer. He was no kin to the great Darius, only a distant cousin of a forgotten line, but he bore the name like a sword. Tall, golden-haired from Median blood mixed with Ionian, he wore a false crown of his own making, gold hammered thin over iron, studded with lapis stolen from temple vaults. He claimed the true crown had corrupted Kavi, turned a humble man into a tyrant who hoarded divine favor. The Simurgh blessed Persia once, he proclaimed in Toklat assemblies, but now she weeps for a usurper on the throne. Rebellion flared like dry grass under summer sun. Kavi, though aged, still rode at the head of his remaining immortals. Battles scarred the plains of Media and the hills of Elam. Victory came hard, each clash left fewer loyal hearts. Saraya, now an old woman with eyes still sharp as star charts, advised her foster father, "The crown's light dims not from your rule, but from the people's doubt. They see a man, not a myth. Give them something greater than a king." So Kavi made a choice that would echo through ages. He summoned the satraps, priests, and tribal chiefs to the great hall of 100 columns. When they gathered, some in fear, some in defiance, he removed the crown from his brow for the first time since the day Ardashir had placed it there. The metal shimmered, catching every torch flame, yet it no longer burned with the old fierce light. "I am no god king," he declared, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "I was a spearman who answered a call. The crown never belonged to me, nor to Ardashir, nor to any single line. It belongs to the land when the land is worthy." He set the crown upon a pedestal of white marble at the hall's center. Then he stepped back. "Let it choose," he said. "Not by blood, not by conquest. Let any soul who believes they can carry it for Persia's healing come forward. The Simurgh will judge." Silence fell, thick as winter fog. One by one, men approached, princes, generals, even a humble date farmer from Khuzestan who had walked 300 leagues simply to see the relic. Each lifted the crown. Each time, it grew heavy as lead, scorching, or ice cold. Some dropped it in pain, others recoiled as visions of their own greed played before their eyes. Darius the Restorer strode forward last, smirking, certain the prize was his by right of ambition. The crown blazed black when he touched it. Smoke rose from his palms. He screamed and fell back, the false diadem on his brow cracking like eggshell. No one else dared. Then, from the shadowed galleries, a girl stepped forward, no more than 14, barefoot, clad in the simple wool of a shepherdess from the Alborz foothills. Her name was Mernaz, daughter of a fire tender who had died defending a village from raiders. She had no lineage, no army, only a quiet certainty in her dark eyes. She knelt before the pedestal, whispered a prayer older than the empire, and lifted the crown with both hands. It did not burn. It did not weigh her down. Instead, it settled upon her brow as gently as a mother's kiss, glowing soft gold, the light spreading outward until every column in the hall seemed carved of sun. The Simurgh's cry echoed, not from the sky, but from within every heart present. Outside, rain fell on lands long parched, rivers remembered their courses. Darius fled into exile, his rebellion crumbling like ash. The satraps knelt, not to a girl, but to the renewal she carried. Kavi, tears tracing the lines of his face, bowed lowest of all. You are the guardian now, he told her. Not queen by birth, but by the land's own choice. Rule with open hands, as I tried to teach. Mernaz nodded, small beneath the great crown, yet taller than any warrior there. Kavi lived only long enough to see the first harvest under her reign, fields golden, children laughing beside full granaries. On the night he died, peacefully in his sleep, the Simurgh was seen circling the peaks one final time, as though bidding farewell to an old friend. The crown passed not by decree, but by worth. And so it continued through the centuries, sometimes on a king's brow, sometimes on a queen's, sometimes hidden until a new soul proved ready. Persia endured invasions, empire rose and fell around her, yet the light of that first blessing never quite went out. For the crown was never truly lost again. It simply waited, for humility, for courage, for the next heart brave enough to carry it, not for glory, but for tomorrow.